I'm Jean Esposito, here to tell you about the life and career of my husband of 59 years. John Louis Esposito was born in an Italian Catholic neighborhood in Brooklyn, New York, to John and Mary Esposito. John was the oldest of 3 sons. His mother, a devout Catholic, was a skilled seamstress, and his father worked on building cameras for the U.S. space program. John's mother's deep faith and his father's stress on justice and helping others deeply influenced the young boy for the rest of his life. John and Brother Lou were very active altar boys who won awards for serving the most masses. By the 5th grade, John was resolved that he would be a Catholic priest. At age 14, John joined the Capuchins, a strict Franciscan order. Family visits were strictly limited. There was no going home at any time except for the death of his immediate family. John wore the scratchy brown woolen Franciscan habit at all times. Waking at 4:55 a.m., he prayed and chanted 5 times a day. He studied and worked. He ate in silence. He had no radio, TV, or newspapers, considered unnecessary distractions. Yet at times he had the thrill of talking to people all over the world after earning his ham radio license. After 10 years, John made a difficult decision to leave the Capuchins 2 years before ordination. He moved to his parents' Jersey City, New Jersey apartment. They were in a building labeled Georgetown, predicting a career 29 years later that was truly unimaginable at the time. John visited Our Lady of Victory's church in Jersey City to lead a youth group. There he met me. I was a college junior working as an evening receptionist at the rectory. The next year, I graduated, we married, I began teaching high school English, and John went to grad school. John earned an M.A. in theology at St. John's University, and then started Temple University's doctoral program in Catholic theology. While at Temple, he taught at Rosemont, a Catholic women's college. He taught Old and New Testament, and especially enjoyed teaching Christian ethics, civil rights, the Vietnam War, and human sexuality. However, his interests changed radically during his doctoral studies. At Temple, gradually, John became fascinated with Hinduism and Buddhism, and even more captivated with Islam, and its connection to what he discovered was the Judeo-Christian Islamic tradition. John engaged Islam as a living faith. His professor, the Palestinian Ismail al-Faruqi, made Islam and Muslim history come alive. Faruqi taught the influence of Islam on Western philosophy, medicine, and science. Most of the students in John's class were Muslims on scholarship from Egypt, Pakistan, Malaysia, and Indonesia. Becoming friends, they learned about John's Italian background and joked about their class as the Temple Mafia, and John became the Don of the Temple Mafia. Temple grads returned home to positions in government, universities, and business. Given his focus on Islam, John studied Arabic at the Middle East Center for Arab Studies, MICAS. It was a training center for British diplomats in the mountains of Shemlan, Lebanon. He also had Arabic tutors in Beirut, where I was teaching at the International College. After 2 years, it was time to return home, but many told John, "You'll never get a job." Professor Faruqi helpfully said that John could teach in Gaddafi's Libya or in apartheid South Africa. However, we sent 100 applications to America for positions in world religions. Thankfully, the College of the Holy Cross in Massachusetts hired John. When he told the senior Jesuit there he would teach world religions, the Jesuit said, "You'll never last." But he did. John became the first non-Jesuit department chair, the director of the Center for International Studies, and later the college's first Loyola professor of Middle East Studies. In the 70s, John traveled to lecture and meet with professors, religious leaders, and leaders of Islamic movements in Egypt, Sudan, Jordan, Kuwait, Pakistan, Malaysia, and Indonesia, about whom he would often write in later years. By 1979, Iran's revolution stunned the world and grabbed the headlines daily. Fears of exporting the revolution spread, and people watched cries of death to America on TV. The revolution expanded John's career dramatically. He was suddenly offered many book contracts, which gave him the chance to address the amazing lack of information and then the flood of misinformation about Islam and Muslim societies. Because of his book contracts and speaking, John has jokingly told audiences that he owes his career and his Lexus to the Ayatollah Khomeini. John has always said, if you want to know what people believe and practice in everyday life, you need text and context. In his memoir, he wrote, I've always been drawn to see how the faith of Muslims plays out on the ground in specific Muslim countries, lives, and societies. I've been acutely aware of the need to distinguish between the faith of the many and the twisted interpretations and actions of the few, between the mainstream majority and a militant, extremist minority. In contrast, two prominent scholars, Bernard Lewis at Princeton and Sam Huntington at Harvard, gained global attention, warning of a clash of civilizations between Islamic and Western societies. John critiqued their writing and debated them at conferences and professional meetings. During the 90s, John and his colleagues addressed the dangerous stereotypes and fears about a global religious resurgence and explored Islamic institutions central to democracy, women's roles in society, and Islam's resurgence as a global force. Concerned about negative press regarding Islam and Arabs, Hasib Sabag, a Palestinian Catholic entrepreneur, sought a way to provide a better understanding of Islam to students, faculty, and the general public. Hasib chose Georgetown to create the center. Located in Washington, D.C., considered the crossroads of international power. The center would reach out internationally to academic and religious communities, government officials, journalists, and corporate leaders. Led by Hasib, Arab, Christian, and Muslim businessmen funded the center. Its mission would be addressing Islam and Christianity in history, politics, and international affairs, as well as current relations between the Muslim world and the West. The center was seen as the right idea at the right time in the right place. When Georgetown's President O'Donovan discussed the director's position with Hasib, both identified John as their candidate. Hasib produced copies of John's books, Islam, the Straight Path, and The Islamic Threat, Myth or Reality, and he declared, this is the person we need. John went to Washington, and we did a commuter marriage for 2 years. John created a center with immediate high profiles by hiring John Vole, Yvonne Haddad, and Amira Sanbal, as well as Shireen Hunter. They had strong academic credentials and public profiles that gave the center immediate attention and the credibility needed to make an impact. The center, known as CMCU, emphasized excellence in training the next generation of leaders, as well as broad international exchanges. John and John Vole traveled from Africa to Asia, speaking at universities and meeting with scholars on many issues. John was a keynote speaker to 200,000 participants at an every 10-year Jamaat-e-Islami conference in India. Over the years, John visited Malaysia often. He knew many people in academia, government, and Islamic organizations. Also, Anwar Ibrahim, who is now Malaysia's Prime Minister, became a strong supporter of the center. Anwar worked with Malaysian benefactors to endow the Malaysia Chair for the Study of Islam in Southeast Asia at the center. Aware of how much John was away from home, Hasib offered to fund my travel with John. It was perfect timing since my company had been sold and I was ready to move. By 2001, CMCU was well known for authoritative insights on Muslim-Christian dialogue as well as Islam in the Muslim world. However, no one was prepared for 9/11, a major challenge for Muslim-West relations, to say the least, and to CMCU's mission. As a CMCU board member exclaimed in 2001, the fallout from 9/11 has set our mission back 10 to 20 years. After 9/11, Saudi businessman Prince Al-Walid bin Talal was seeking ways to promote better understanding between Muslim countries and the West. John visited him in Saudi Arabia to discuss his interests. They talked about the advantages of a successful company versus a startup as John shared information about the center. Al-Walid, the shrewd businessman, decided to invest in CMCU. Georgetown received the $20 million that John had suggested to strengthen the center as a force against Islamophobia and hate and for international dialogue and exchange. With its future guaranteed, John and the center faculty of the renamed ACMCU, Al-Walid Center for Muslim Christian Understanding, focused on an expanded vision and outreach. Their many publications were translated into major languages in Europe, the Middle East, and Asia, and they became primary resources for authoritative information on Islam and the Muslim world. The multiple Oxford encyclopedias and reference works, edited by John and his colleagues, helped to institutionalize new ways to understand the Islamic world and Islam's role in history, politics, and society. After 9/11, John focused on writing for a broad audience. Using Q&As, he explained what everyone needs to know about Islam. He explored jihad and holy war, the rise of terrorist groups, and emerging Islamic leaders. John's writing today focuses on understanding Sharia and examining the future of Islam in a world of increasingly globalized and growing Islamophobia. As an endowed center, ACMCU's work will continue, especially in these critical times. John has established linkages with scholars, centers, and universities across the world. Over his 50-year career, John has published 55 books, received 5 honorary doctorates, and many awards. John raised new funds for the Bridge Initiative, created to shine a light on Islamophobia across the world. With over 1 million followers on social media sites, Bridge provides a valuable resource for students, academics, journalists, and advocacy groups across the globe. John was deeply moved and grateful for the Festschrift, Overcoming Orientalism, edited by Professor Emerita and former center leader Tamara Song. We will conclude with some of their comments to John.
John became my role model more than ever. He was the unflappable, consummate public intellectual who brought academic heft to his public conversations and modeled personal integrity when he refused to be cowed by those who tried to bully him into silence.
You are in many ways the chief architect of the infrastructure of post-Orientalist Islamic studies. And I mean not just your specific scholarly contributions, but everything that you've done to shape and create resources for the field as a whole. The reference works, the journals, you've not just added distinctive intellectual contributions and scholarly perspectives, but you've helped to institutionalize them, to kind of make available as resources to not just scholars, but broader publics as well, a way of understanding and thinking about Islam and Muslims that has just been so powerful.
Once I was attending a Friday prayer in a mosque in Washington, D.C., and the Imam in the Jummah khutbah said, everyone should read John Esposito's What Everyone Needs to Know About Islam. Now, this one, I've never heard a Muslim cleric or a Muslim khatib ever mentioning a Christian scholar to be read to learn about Islam. So that was very heartening, and I was really taken aback.
I was always impressed at how calm you could be about things that made one so angry. But you just kept going, and the center was just a phenomenal resource for people. And you would bring, government agents would come because it was Georgetown, and you gave us the stage. You gave us a place for our voices to be heard and to be stated.
Another important contribution that John has made, and that has been his deep sympathy, his compassion, and his understanding for the struggles of Muslim societies around the world struggling for human rights and democracies against despotic regimes, many of them supported by the West.
Professor Esposito was kind of a lone voice in the intellectual world saying, no, Muslims are human beings. Muslims have a rich tradition. Muslims are working hard to contribute positively to the modern world through their own tradition, right? And his scholarship reflected that. But I want to stress it wasn't just his scholarship. There are a lot of people who do excellent scholarship, but it's a very few professors that have a public impact on the lives of students and the citizenry, right? And that is truly remarkable. Thank you very much for the service to your field, for your courage, your moral integrity, and your leadership, without which many of us would not be here today.